evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the last exclusive chat at the Prague European Summit 2020. This time we are going to speak about Europe as a geopolitical actor and if Europe can be a new leader in a greener and digital world. New European Commission declared itself as a geopolitical commission with aim to play bigger role in international relations. At the same time, European Union wants to be frontrunner in climate and digital policy. Could she reach its geopolitical goals through its green and digital plans? And can European Union be a key geopolitical actor in general? These are some questions we would like to discuss here today in the next roughly half an hour. Answering will be our distinguished guest, former Foreign Minister of Sweden and former First Vice President of European Commission, Margot Wallström. Welcome, Ms. Wallström. Thank you for joining our chat and congratulations to the Vision of Europe Award that you received here at the Prague European Summit yesterday.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Now I'm turning to our audience. As you surely know, you can send us your questions to our speaker through the Slido, which you find next to our stream, and I will put the questions to Ms. Wallström during our Q&A session in the second part of our talk. But let's start with a chat. I would like to open it with a question I mentioned in my introduction. Can the European Union be a key geopolitical actor in general, combating United States, China, Russia and other powers? And if so, how could climate and digital policy help European Union in this way?
Yes, absolutely. We are already a very important geopolitical actor. We become strong and convincing if we stick together. So of course unity among the EU member states is absolutely crucial. I think that we are an important trade partner. We are one of the biggest donors of development aid to countries around the world. We are a hub for innovation and technological development as well. And I think that we convince the rest of the world about our strength through cooperation and showing that we have turned from being enemies and fighting wars to being able to cooperate and develop socially and economically. And I think we will first be put to a test in fighting the pandemic and the current ongoing crisis. And I think we can best do that by showing the world that we can distribute vaccines in an effective and fair way. So that will maybe be the first thing that the world will look at, how we manage that. And the second, I would say, is the Green Deal, and to show that we can implement the decisions that have already been taken, again be an example to the rest of the world, that they will see that this offers first and foremost opportunities, including business opportunities for our countries. And I think a third challenge to all of us is, of course, to redefine security. And we have to move into an understanding that we need common security. And security has to include also climate change, hybrid, cyber, disinformation, all of these new threats to our societies. I think we also have another challenge right now, which is to fight for and defend multilateralism. To some this is a difficult word, but it simply means international cooperation. And to show that we continue to stand up for human rights. So that is really the challenge ahead of us. But I think also we are that entity with a stubborn heartbeat, as somebody has called the European Union and Europe. And we just have to show that that heartbeat will take us a long way into the future.
When you mention on Green Deal or climate on one side and the security on the other, I would like to remind one of your quotes that you said in July 2018 in New York. I quote, "To prevent the conflicts of tomorrow, we can no longer afford to ignore this threat of changing climate," unquote. Are we really aware of this connection between security and climate policy? A lot of European politicians and ordinary Europeans still take it as two separate issues, I think.
Yeah, they might, but I think increasingly we have learned about the link between climate change and security. And if you allow me, I will just use an example. I traveled when I was a foreign minister, and also when we were serving 2 years as non-permanent members on the Security Council. We traveled to Lake Chad. And in that part of Africa, you know, that lake has shrunk by 90%. So only 10% of an enormous lake area is left. And that has also created a lot of tensions because, of course, if you cannot get fish or water to give to both people and cattle, you change also the power balance between those who are herders and those who are farmers. And even on those small islands that have been created, when the water evaporates and disappears, then there were small islands, and actually terrorists have settled on those small islands and create their own sort of small kingdoms. And they take people prisoners and bring out there, and they can plan their deeds also from there. So it has changed the livelihoods of people, and it has also been the source of new conflicts that could turn into, in the end, wars or armed conflicts as well. So I think that with an increasing pressure on sources of water and food, of course, if people cannot find water, you will see that there will be fights over water resources. And this is already something that is brewing in many parts of the world. And you can see it along the Blue Nile River, because several of the countries along the Blue Nile River are dependent on that water. And if you cannot agree on how to distribute water, and with climate change making it even more difficult to find enough water, this can become a source of conflict and even wars.
How can help to European geopolitical, but also climate and other aspirations, the outcome of the US presidential elections and win of Joe Biden?
Well, I think that we are so dependent also on having a good transatlantic link for our safety, and I mean also, of course, military safety, but we trade with the US, and with a new president that actually believes in international cooperation, in multilateralism, that is open to discuss with Europe, and also understands climate change and realizes that also the US has to go back to the Paris Agreement. We will have a very different starting point, at least, Not to say that it is easy for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, but they are no miracle persons. But I think that they come with an honest understanding, sincere understanding of the problems, and they want to be partners and friends with Europe. They don't see us and identify us as an enemy any longer. And that was unfortunately the way President Trump saw us.
Regarding Joe Biden, we have one of the questions of our followers. What do you think of President Macron's calling for strategic autonomy in EU even after Biden's election? Is it complementary to NATO or in contrast?
No, I don't think that we should do things that are in contrast or creating sort of a controversy with NATO, but cooperate with NATO. I think we do that as individual countries, and I think the European Union must continue to do so. I think that everybody realizes that Europe and the European Union also has to invest in its own security arrangements, that it has to, the European countries have to work together to make sure that they can take decisions also to make us less dependent on the things that we cannot properly decide upon. I think that we work better with the Americans as well to look at the kind of very self-sufficient posture that China has, and also some of the security threats that we see from Russia. If we work together, but still Europe invests in its own to create a capacity of its own, I think that's the way forward.
What about other global challenges for EU, like pandemics or trade rivalries with China and other powers? How much they threaten these EU aspirations as a global actor?
No, of course. I mean, I remember also and I experienced as Minister of Foreign Affairs that we had that discussion also in the Council with all the foreign ministers, and we all had to deal with Huawei wanting to invest. We all saw that China insisted on creating trade deals or agreements that should make us open up our economies, but we could not see that that was reciprocal, that they did the same thing to allow our companies in or allow competition. So, of course, if we then stick together, if we act 28 as it was, 27 countries together, we will be a force to reckon with. The minute that we are torn apart, the easier it will be for a country like China or Russia to also interfere in our businesses or to threaten us in different ways. So that's why I'm saying we have to stick together. And if we take decisions on sanctions, they will only be powerful and effective if all of us embrace and implement them. So this is where our strength lies, and we have to take care of that power that the European Union has. We are a very important market, of course, to both China and other countries, and the Americans as well.
Speaking about the trade, one of the question of our followers, Margot asked, the 15 Asian countries signed the Trans-Pacific Agreement, which will be the largest free trade zone with 30% of GDP of the world. How to prepare the EU to compete with this bloc?
Well, I do believe that free trade agreements are that's a good invention, and I believe that there has to be more of those regional sort of trade agreements as well. I mean, the whole European Union builds on that idea, so we cannot say no, you cannot do it in other parts of the world. And let's hope that we can then link up to and make agreements with those organizations as well. It makes all of us stronger and more predictable, and it will help our economies. So I think that that's a good idea. And we know that many of the conflicts that we now see are building up in parts of the world, including in Asia. I mean, they would be helped if there were regional security arrangements as well, a discussion about how do we organize and solve conflicts, as we have already with the OSCE in our part of the world. So I think that we should be helpful in building those sort of multilateral arenas and those organizations that will be beneficial also to us.
Staying out of Europe, one of our followers asked, do you think that EU should be more active in Africa, not only because of migration, but also because of climate and demographic reasons?
Yes, and we have, of course, a cooperation with Africa and with the African Union, and that's an important link between the European Union and the African Union. And we see that this will be, again, a win-win situation. If we can, through our sort of political and economic contacts with African countries, we can help them to build their own resilience. We can adapt to climate change together. And we can also make sure that people have a chance of staying and growing in their own countries, and they don't have to flee to come to Europe in unsafe boats and what have you. So I think that this is clearly a strategy that has already been embarked on, and that I think will have to continue. And we see so many of these both opportunities and challenges in Africa, because there are also growing economies, they have a very young population, and they should be able to do much more also to fight climate change. And as it is now, of course, China has taken a lot of space that maybe the European Union ought to be able to claim instead.
For the end of our discussion, I would like to return back to Europe and to the Central Europe, to where we stand now. Does not Central and Eastern Europe threaten this green future of Europe with its lukewarm and sometimes even hostile attitude towards climate and environmental measures?
I don't think that we should speak that way about members of the European Union. We are all in this together. And I think also one has to show an understanding of countries who come from a very different background, politically and economically and what have you. You have to understand that some countries have a longer way to walk and bigger changes to expect from turning from fossil fuel-based economies into a green economy. And then we have to help them. I mean, that's the whole idea of what was used as a concept, a common but differentiated responsibilities. But I think now is really at such a turning point where also countries like Poland or Hungary have to understand that this is a time to change, and that it will be beneficial to them, that this will be again a win-win if we help each other. But I think what is problematic right now, more problematic maybe than that kind of transition into a green economy, is that we have different views on defending human rights and sort of the basic requirements for being a member of the European Union, and how we look at democracy. But no, you are not being difficult, and I even think that it's a good thing if countries come together and say we have a common culture, or we come from very similar conditions, so let's work together to see if we can also be a somewhat more coordinated or stronger voice within the European Union. But it must be used in such a way that it helps all of us to better understand and respect each other. And I think we have much more to do in the Balkans, and we have to show that we are a reliable partner also to the countries in the Balkans if we want to see a democratic development, if we want them on board. But I can tell you one thing. It's something that we can choose to do or not do to address the environmental challenges and problems that we have and climate change. It is simply, it's a must. We are already there, and we have to just be much more forceful in making the right decisions and move along.
You are speaking about helping these countries. Do you have any recipe how to do it, how to convince them to make their attitude toward these policies more positive, and to convince them about these connections with other relevant issues like security, as we mentioned it in the beginning?
I think that we must listen to young generation, because they understand this. They see that this is already established science since a long time back, that this offers new opportunities, new businesses, a new lifestyle that is actually bringing more quality. But do you remember also, was it a year ago, or maybe not even that long ago, that Croatia had 50 million bees that died? And we believe that this was caused by a pesticide. If we don't have bees any longer in Europe, we cannot survive. We need the bees. We need biodiversity for our economies to grow, for our societies to survive. And we see some of these disasters, but it's, prevention is better than cure. And I think that especially young people know this. So we just have to make the leaders listen more, maybe to young people, and respect the voice of young people in our countries. That will lead us.
Okay, thank you very much. Our time is unfortunately running out, so thank you very much for joining our chat, for your answers. Have a nice evening to Sweden.
Thank you.
That was former Swedish foreign minister and former vice president of the European Commission, Margot Wallström, as the final guest of chats of this year's Prague European Summit. I would also like to thank you for your attention and for your questions. This chat is over, but Prague European Summit 2020 is not over yet, so stay on our stream. And for myself, I would like to say goodbye and have a nice evening.